Hello and welcome to SANlight. Today we're here with a new format. We got a couple of guests this time. I'd like to introduce them to you. First of all, it's Allison. She's our new account manager for the US. We got Chris from Hydroponic Research, straight from California, and Martin, our CEO. Today's topic is about the California weed market. How was it 10 years ago? How did it change? And what can we in Europe basically learn from the California weed industry? So I'd say let's introduce you to the viewers. So the stage is yours.
So I'm Allison Zervopoulos. I have been cultivating in California for over 15 years now. Started out by having my own cultivation company in Los Angeles under Crop 215, and then started doing consulting all over the US the past 6 to 8 years. And now I'm really excited to be working here with SANlight.
My name is Chris LaRose. I am the founder, formulator, CEO of Hydroponic Research located in San Diego, California. I started the business in 2011 as a graduation from grower to overall determining factor of the quality of my finished product. And I've pursued that skill, that art over the last 12 years as a manufacturer of fertilizer products for growing plants. Cannabis focused, but all plants.
So it's me now. So I'm Martin Anker, founder and CEO of SANlight. Founded the company in 2012 with the focus delivering best LED grow lights to the world of growers.
Awesome. Great. And so the fact that we now have two Americans here obviously brings us to California. It's the heart of cannabis cultivations. We as Europeans always look there, look for new strains, look for new trends. Allison, can you tell us what are the current trends? What's the current market situation in California?
I think the most important trends in California, or most of the US right now, is a focus on efficiency and being as efficient as possible. Prices in California are dropping a lot and the cost of producing is going up a lot. So being as efficient and data-driven as we can in making those decisions to be more efficient and how to kind of handle our day-to-day practices is super important.
Chris, would you agree or have something to add there?
Yeah, I mean, I see it as simply a quantity versus quality conversation becoming very loud regarding most people focused on quantity and how efficient they can produce quantity. But that, begins the conversation of differentiation and quality. And that's something that people are just starting to realize. Like, there's a lot out there, a lot of flower, but not what I'm looking for.
Not a lot of flower.
I want flower that tastes, that's full flavor, smooth, a flower beyond what the norm is in California. So you see a rapidly progressing industry splintering off probably a little bit towards a craft quality flower market, but the majority of growers are focused on cost, efficiency, and ultimately probably ending up in vape carts.
Yeah. Okay. But what are the challenges? Why is not all flower tasty?
I think people are just trying to scale too big, too quick, and just cutting a lot of corners and kind of resulting in a lower grade product.
Okay, and that applies to the still existing black market, or are you only talking about the legal market?
I think it's both. I think sometimes the black market could actually be a bit better than the legal market, unfortunately. But then you're having an untested, unregulated product, which is a risk.
All right. And obviously nutrients play a crucial role in the end product. Is there any advice you could give a grower to improve the quality, the taste of the final flower?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, know your sources. I mean, that's my primary goal, is to source the best, purest ingredients, right? So again, as a grower, you really want to look at who your suppliers are and the information that you're getting from them. And you're going to see there's probably going to be some conflicting of information, but just doing your own kind of, again, you have to refer somewhat to your own experience here, because that's one problem I see with people jumping into growing, is they really don't have the basic experience of just understanding how often to water a plant, or the factors of environmental control and how they can change within a room. depending on corners, where the doors are.
Microclimate.
Microclimate. So there's just a lot of deep knowledge that, I'm not saying this isn't stuff you can learn about in the course of a matter of months, but these are practical common sense things that people get lost in, they don't consider, and then they have failure or their qualities, suffers.
Yeah. And something that I was very, not shocked, but I thought I will go to the States and I would see perfect cultivations. Everybody exactly knows what they're doing, but the level of professionalism and also experience varies so much also in the States. And now we see the same in Germany. Martin, you can maybe talk about something about that regarding the social clubs and their experience with cannabis. A lot of them come from obviously the black market. They grew in a couple of tents and now they try to scale up. Do you see the same challenges, problems there?
Yeah, sure. So scaling up from a tent to a bigger facility is always a challenge. It's a pretty costly challenge, honestly. And what we are trying to achieve is it's better to build a small, good grow room as to have few, let's say worse grow rooms, because they cost you a bunch of money at the end and the output is very low. And so you will lose money with it. And so the recommendation, what we can give to those clubs is go step by step, but every step should be nice and good quality of the technology, because at the end it's the growers' tools which makes it possible to grow good quality. For sure, then the grower is coming into the game, setting the right parameters, choosing the right raw materials, but at the end, the tool itself, it needs to work 100%.
Yeah. Is that also something you saw as your role as a consultant, that people kind of start small, get bigger, or do people always want everything at once?
I see both. I feel like in California, it was interesting in the beginning seeing people trying to scale up. I had a few warehouses where you could tell people just basically mimicked how they were in an 8 or 10 light garage or basement, and they tried to do a whole warehouse like that. And it wasn't super efficient because now you have 15, 10 light rooms with all these smaller pieces of equipment where you could have been much more efficient with larger pieces of equipment and larger rooms. But I also see the opposite. I see other states where people have no experience and they're like, we're going to set up a 50,000 square foot facility and just go all for it. And I think both are a struggle. But I think starting small and maintaining that efficiency and then scaling from there is the best way to do it.
And also maybe also with irrigation or fertilizing, is it the same kind of always just as I can imagine, if I try a new nutrients, it's better to try it on a smaller area than instead of a big facility. What would your advice for a club in Germany be to try your nutrients? Should they try it on a big scale, smaller scale, do test runs first, or how do you approach new customers? How do you help them to be successful with your nutrients?
So depending on if they already have a system, built, depending on what their experience is, if they're 30 lights and under, that would be just kind of trying to quantify it. We have easy 1-part products for mixing directly into a reservoir, into water, and then using. For scaling, for above 30, 50, 100, 150 and on, you will need to incorporate a fertigation technology in order to create consistency from day to day as far as your feed and your just your irrigation. Okay. So you need to scale. At some point, you do need technologies to allow you to address all the individual needs of the plants, because it's I've seen this play out where people are hand watering to death. Like, it's literally, they're trying to hand water their way to success, but what they should have done is put the wand down, start using the right technology, and scale that way. I've seen this happen time and time again. It's honestly kind of sad watching people hand water for 3 hours a day. Yeah.
Super inefficient with labor and not great for the plants.
And people don't give each plant the same water, even if they're counting, because they count faster or slower. And I've seen people overwater, underwater. It is one of the worst ways to try to scale like any grow is to not graduate your irrigation technology. It's something that you have to do if you want consistency and if you want guaranteed results. Yeah.
Perfect. You brought up the next topic, so I would like to know more about technology. What defines a modern grow operation in California right now? You mentioned fertigation methods? Like, what are they using currently? Are there any trends or new products on the market?
For fertigation?
Yeah, for example.
I mean, would you want to? I mean, there are things that are without naming brands. Even within brands, there are like new peristaltic pumps that are actually more durable. You know, they're not the same peristaltic pumps you find in medical. They're made more for corrosive and different types of acids and chemicals. So those are more designed for like heavy application all day long. I'm not going to name any brands, but they're basically, that would be a technology that was there before, but now has been modified for our industry.
Okay. And I think we see the same, right? If you think about the plug and play grow box we are now developing, we also saw that we can take parts from different industry, put them together and make them better. Can you tell us more about that? How your process of rethinking HVAC works?
Yeah, rethinking HVAC. So we have seen in the US as well that we have seen very good facilities, with really modern HVAC systems. But the main facilities I have visited struggled with humidity problems, with huge humidity problems, because they just build it up like a home grow, I want to mention, yes.
I think that's the biggest issue I see in most facilities. It's humidity.
Yeah, sure. Humidity is always a problem, yeah. And what we are trying now as SANlight is, to take parts from other industry, fit them together, that we have a whole product which fits perfectly into our industry with affordable costs. And I'm a strong believer that this will work out, just looking around what's in other markets available, not looking into the cannabis industry just and say, okay, yes, there is something good what I can use. May look to the greenhouse gardeners as well. Mm-hmm. Those guys are cultivating plants since 100 years. They know a lot. Maybe it's a good idea to talk with them more about technical details to get new ideas. We are used to grow indoors. They are used to grow in greenhouses, but I think both fractions can learn from each other a lot. And technology-wise, look around what's available in other markets. For example, you can use a cold water chiller from a machinery industry as well, and made that cheaper because it's produced in much higher quantities. Mm-hmm. So that's what we are doing at the moment, looking at the other industries.
Yeah. It's interesting. Alison, we talked before about trends already, and you mentioned AI. What did you see in your cultivation times? How does AI now impact a cultivator, a facility?
AI could do a lot for grow rooms now. There's certain technology out there where you can have cameras with all of your environmental sensors picking up all of that data, so you can see where in your room you're having microclimates. You can also get images of the plants to see how your symptoms are progressing. You could see how much more necrosis or powdery mildew you have today versus last week. Up until recently, a lot of that was dependent on your employees. And that could be very subjective. No. Some of them could be like, well, I see 10% more. Someone else is like, well, I see 50% more. Who's right? No. And then other times employees can leave and they take all of that information with them when they quit or leave that position. So by having technology be able to do all of that for us, we have access to a lot more data that we didn't have before. And using that data, we could come up with more actionable insights to improve our grows.
It's also kind of our philosophy in our laboratory: collect data.
Yeah.
Can use it right now, but
it's very important because you can't make educated decisions on how to improve without that data.
No, that's cool. And maybe Martin, we're talking about technology. Now we have one of the most efficient LED lights on the market. Can you tell us a little bit of the difference between a first or second generation LED compared to our Evo series now? It's obviously efficiency, but I think there's much more it's behind it.
So at the end, it's always a combination of electrical efficiency and plant efficiency. 10 years ago, everything was on high power LEDs because good mid power LEDs haven't been available at those time. So we needed to build spectrums in the knowledge that it's may not the perfect spectrum, but the technology was not at this point to make it perfect. Nowadays, We can use mid-power technology combined with high-power technology to took those best technology from a LED point of view, fitted together to an almost perfect spectrum, which is made for much higher light intensities, for example. Our Q series 5 years ago, it was made to replace HPSs one by one. So the goal has been to save as much energy as possible. And it was not possible to run them up to 1,300 micromole because we had problems with bleaching and all that stuff. Nowadays, technology gives us much more opportunities to create highly electrical efficient spectrums, which are also efficient on the plant end side, especially at high intensities. And those high intensities are needed to influence quality positive as well as quantity positive. And that hasn't been possible 5 years ago, for example.
Would you agree, Chris? I mean, you also saw the change from HUPS to LED from a new gen perspective. Now people are running much higher ECs. What is your take on basically the change from HPS to LED from a new gen?
For me personally, it took a couple of years. I mean, there wasn't the information available there is now. There weren't the PPFD meters on a user end, scale even available that were decent quality. There were a lot of things missing, but I learned the old way. I felt the heat. I saw my plants not transpiring. I had to make observations, so learning about, heightening your humidity, bringing your humidity up in the first week, while the plants were still kind of tapping root and really starting to pull water. You need to supplement that humidity in that first week. I wasn't used to that because I was running a light that pulled the water through the plants. It literally forced them to transfer, evaporated water off. And that was kind of a phenomenon that, I had to realize from experience and learn about myself. So if I had met you guys, I could have saved myself 2 years just having proper data information. So learning about VPD, learning about what's happening on the leaf surface, how the light interacts with the plant, that I leave to the lighting professionals. That's not my focus of the plant. Now, I want to maximize photosynthesis. So obviously, if you're supplying the light, I want to try to use that light through the plant as efficiently as possible. So what we started doing was playing with ratios of magnesium to zinc and found that it was necessary to make some very micro changes to accommodate for the increased spectrum or the overall pressure on transpiration, just forcing the plant to grow. So I had to make minor changes to some of our formulas that created a sort of a renaissance within our own company to make better products, but better suited for the technology. Whereas, I would say I'm not familiar with any other brand actually taking, time and space and just trying to perfect a formula for LED. The same formula will work for HPS, but again, in my own trials, I found it necessary to make small changes, and that led to the next generation of our products, the VBX series. That's when we started implementing those changes into our formulas. And we updated our dose product too for scaling with our new micronutrient pack, which was developed under LEDs. So
Under ours?
no, but well, you weren't there. You weren't there yet. I wish I had met you sooner. No, but again, it merited major changes in how I saw a grow room. And I don't care if someone's been growing for 30 years like myself. In the last 5 years, the idea of a grow room has completely changed, all because of the technology available to us. I can see exactly right now if my plant has been watered, what the medium moisture percentage is, and then looking at the room temperature, determine whether or not I need to call someone in California and tell them to go fill up my stock tank. You know what I mean? It's just like the control and power you have now, it does make it easier, but I can see from an entry point it being a little bit more like, I got to understand all this technology too.
That's so amazing though, because I remember back in the day, like we couldn't leave our grow rooms. Like you were there all the time. And now with all of this data and technology, like you said, you can call your guy and be like, hey, I see the plants aren't getting watered. Or I see they're being overwatered, and control that from so far away. It's really amazing.
It also allows for predictive kind of predicting results, right? Like, or just more of an assurance towards end up with a positive result. Just having sensors, you can even have redundancies within those sensors, and then being able to trigger things remotely is a wonderful thing, using Wi-Fi. So it just totally has changed. The grow room has fundamentally changed in the last maybe 7 years, 5 to 7 years. Sensor technology is cheap now. I don't know if cheap is the right word, but it's very cost effective. Yeah. So as far as high ECs go, that's a whole nother thing. We actually don't believe you should need to run high ECs. That's not what we promote. A lot of our competitors promote a 3 EC standard, and that's because they want to make sure no matter what, your plant's getting enough probably micronutrient. And so you have to run it that high. That's not the case with our product. We try to deliver balanced ratios that therefore requiring, it's just a lower overall EC. So 2.4 would be the average with our product, 2.2, depending on the medium.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, when talking about HBS, Ali, and nutrients, of course, there's this CalMag myth. Can you tell us something about what's your experience with the CalMag problem? And then maybe, Mark, you can add your latest thoughts on it.
So from my experience, I found raising the magnesium there's always been a lot of calcium in our products. I mean, more than enough, more than a sufficient amount, because it's a good thing to buffer with, as far as having that available extra amounts. But when it comes to the magnesium part, so CalMag, that's an old story for me, because we incorporated high calcium magnesium into our original products that were powder. But for growing under LED, I think, and Martin would chime in on this, because of the available light, you need more magnesium available to be used in the process of photosynthesis, right? It's a macronutrient or secondary nutrient involved in photosynthesis. So I did find that by increasing that ratio, that I was able to the plants were better able to adapt to LED, and just the quick return and response time to growing from transplant,
Yeah. What we have seen in all trials is, adding more CalMag doesn't solve the problem. That's for 100% true. We have seen it in the last few trials we have done. But what we've seen by luck is, all the HBS growers, they start at a much higher VPD as we are used to start with LEDs. And I'm not 100% sure at the moment, but maybe that's just the easy solution, to start an LED grow also at the higher VPD level, as the guys 20 years ago has done it without knowledge what they have done. 20 years ago, no one was talking about VPD. They just did it. And more or less, I can claim, they started with VPD of 0.8 up to 1. And then somehow the VPD technology in combination with LED technology comes into the game. Then we had the advantage to start at low VPD, but maybe this advantage was not that big. Maybe it was a step backwards. And that's what we are trying at the moment, just starting at higher VPD levels from the seedling or from the clone. And maybe this will the fucking easy solution for clones.
But basically what you said before, right? So you had to adjust the lower transpiration. You had to adjust to be aware of the lower transpiration when using
Yeah, I mean, I noticed just an increased period of time that the plants would not draw down the medium's moisture percentage. They weren't drying back in accordance to what I expected from sodium lighting. And again, this might not be the most scientific breakdown, but I kind of feel like sodiums, they pull the water through the plant. It's not a natural process, but it's probably just evaporation, a little bit of transpiration. But I noticed a lag time in the roots tapping the medium and drawing it down to moisture. And so, I started circulating air around the lower portions of my rooms to assist in that transpiration. But ultimately, what I hadn't learned yet was that with LEDs in a closed loop, that you want to accumulate some humidity to buffer, to allow for the plant to transpire, right? Is that correct? You want some humidity to kind of insulate the plant.
At the end, you want to regulate the transpiration. That's all you want with regulating BPD. Yes.
Yeah. But through that evaporation, having some more humidity in the room is not beneficial to the hitting VPD, depending on what your ambient temperatures and everything.
Yes, true.
Yeah. I don't know if any of that's worth putting in the video, but
I mean, I think it kind of goes back to when we first started hearing about LEDs. Everyone was saying the biggest learning curve with LEDs is you can't run it with like a HPS room where you run it a bit more dry and cool. With LEDs, you have to run it more hot and humid.
which is the complete opposite, right, of what you had to do to grow successfully before LED.
Yeah.
Which, depending on how long you'd been doing it the old way, it was hard to unlearn to some degree. It took me about 2 years to feel really confident in how high my lights were hung, what intensity to run them at. I'm still playing around. I mean, it's with SANlight a year in, I'm finding at 80%, right, of my power, full power is plenty for the space I have. And the results are also completely different. Having the 10-degree angle slope on the sides, my sides are just thickening up like they never have, because you're getting that cross lighting, I guess. And I'm not sure of all of the dimensional benefits of that, but I see a real benefit from having that 10-degree angle on the side lights, which you can adjust, very easily. I was really impressed with that aspect of the product. It's really, because it allowed you to turn the product into a different product when you needed it, which is really cool.
Yeah.
So,
and that's basically what we are all about: flexibility and flexibility.
I think that's super important. It gives growers more power too.
Yeah. And we saw still a lot of HPS facilities. What are the most common challenges when somebody wants to switch from HPS to LED?
I think, like we said, just about that whole learning curve, I think a lot of people are really set in their ways. I think trying to unlearn how they've been growing for the past however many years is really difficult for a lot of people. I think a lot of people have been told that they need those cooler temperatures to get the color they want or get those trichomes that they need. So I think just trying to think differently about their process is the biggest challenge.
Yeah, and also the coloring. We just saw it in our trial. It has a lot to do also with the spectrum. We saw colorful plants in the LED room, and the HPS were just green. It almost looked like they're two totally different genetics.
Yeah.
The LED room was getting more purple, and
The HPS was just saying the same.
from week 5 to week 9, green all the time. Yeah.
It's amazing.
So, and I mean, we mentioned this before, but do you think California is still trendsetter for the global weed market, and will they be able to maintain your position with a lot of other countries legalizing or getting regulated?
I think we will be. I think California has always been a trendsetter with weed. I think that California is the one who is really having to kind of push things and experiment more to figure out how to be more efficient and how to cut costs and how to have a higher quality product, because it's just so competitive right now. So I think with having to remain competitive comes a lot of better products. And I think they'll keep being, sorry, what was the word you were using for this?
Trendsetter?
Yeah. So I think they'll keep remaining trendsetters in the area.
Would you agree?
in the world of synthetically grown biomass cannabis, maybe not. As far as the craft market goes, I think it's just gonna, kind of, depending on the countries, how it's set up. In Germany, I think has the best right now business model for cannabis as far as keeping it local or smaller, and which will definitely encourage people to differentiate quality, have a better quality. In that regards, I feel like, California is a little bit behind the mark. It's just so motivated by greed and quantity. And a lot of the players are truly not growers. They're people that are either, influential on Instagram or can find some hip hop icon to endorse their product,
Mm-hmm.
And so, seeing past that, if we can get past that, and California is notorious for superficial personalities and people that are just throwing around $100 bills, or whatever. In reality, we are an agricultural state. We always have been. We grow more food for our country than any other state. But that being said, cannabis has attracted some really, not so grower kind of guys that have jumped into the game to get rich They don't care about the finished product. Therefore, they don't know enough about the finished product and actually make it a better quality. So as long as we can get some of that influence off the table and we look at the more of a craft beer kind of model of it, which I've seen, myself happen in San Diego is famous for craft beer. It's a reinvention of just 2 styles of beer. Now we have 100 breweries. And that's what I'm hoping for. And I see Germany ahead in that game. Just more organized.
In the US are also starting to do that. Minnesota, for example, they're really focusing on those micro and craft licenses as opposed to bigger licenses. Really trying to limit those bigger MSOs from coming into the state. So I think we'll see that across the US too. But I think California has the advantage of that experience. A lot of those states like Minnesota, they don't have the experience that California has.
Probably better people too. Californians are nice. You just got to know where to go. Yeah.
And we kind of saw the same on MJBizCon. I think the weed industry in California or the US is very consumer driven, obviously, and a lot of money right now goes into packaging, and packaging is kind of the differentiation right now, right? Would you agree? So people don't choose by the best looking bud, they choose by the fanciest or coolest packaging, basically.
And I think we did that because of our regulations. You can go into dispensaries now and you can see like one small nug, but you don't get to see a whole jar full of the nugs of that strain. So a lot of it does come down to packaging.
Different before when you
so back when I first started in 2010, all the dispensaries, they just had all their jars out. You could open the jars and smell it and see like
little bit like
quite a bit of
Amsterdam and Barcelona.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Yep.
Okay.
And then with Prop 64, it all switched to being prepackaged. So now you really don't see the exact weed that you're getting. You see one small sample nug that might not even be a good reflection of what you're actually getting.
It is in a shelf for like a month, maybe.
Exactly. Yep.
Mm-hmm. But I think it's very interesting now with those clubs, because with the club situation in Germany, you take out the money from the business.
Yeah.
So they are not money driven, they are passion driven. And we will have many, many clubs. And so I think that can positively influence the development of the market in general, or the development of technology, because they are doing it by passion and not just by money. And pretty curious about the insights.
And they also have to, because they have a certain amount of members they can have. Members should stay at their club. Members should be happy, and you should always deliver outstanding products to your members. So that's super interesting. So I think we heard a lot of things about the California market, and do you have a kind of a perspective for the European market? I mean, you just have been at Cannabis. Barcelona is a crazy place for weed. Amsterdam as well is super crazy, but we're going into another direction. For example, Ardachtic, one of our partners, they're the first ones who legally grow weed for the coffee shops in Amsterdam. What's your perspective for Europe for the next 5 to 10 years?
I think it's really exciting. I don't think I know enough about the market or the consumers here to know how they'll really do with it. I know that from watching the US, every state kind of handles things different, and there's certain trends in each state. Like South Dakota, for example, everyone really wanted to grow in soil. Everyone really wanted to grow from seeds. Autoflowers were popular, where in California, none of those things were super popular.
More rock cool clones.
Exactly. Yep. So it'll be really interesting to see what people want to do here. I would hope that they don't try to like reinvent the wheel and kind of try to learn from a lot of the mistakes that we've already made, and just try to kind of going back to that efficiency, just being as efficient as possible from the beginning. And like I said, just learning from all the mistakes California made.
All right. Chris, what's your take?
I've been traveling to Europe on business now for about 7 years. And what the coolest event I've ever done as a grower, now a manufacturer with a nutrient company, was an event called the Summer Social with SANlight in the UK at Plantasia Farms, which was honestly the coolest experience as a grower. And again, a manufacturer, to see your product used in a greenhouse dedicated to your product, growing 100 varieties of tomatoes. That to me, no one in the States has done anything to bring people together like that. Maybe I should do it, but still, I don't have a greenhouse. I have like controlled rooms that not anybody can go in. But still, it's to see that executed, something on that level that brought people together with common interests. I would like to see more of that. I think Europe has a better chance of doing that. You know, unfortunately, in the U.S., cannabis events are big name hip hop guys.
We lost a lot of the culture.
The thug life thing. So, you know, it's more about the plant. Like you're growing a plant, you're producing, you know, something that can be consumed either for medicinal use or to relax, you know, and that's the quality of it's important. Like food, it's basically like food, right? I mean, it's produced agriculturally. So, you know, do you want to feed your family just salt or do you want to feed them something that's got some flavor? You know, that's kind of the choice that, you know, growers in California need to make sooner than later because it's all the same right now. You know, it tastes like paper. Yeah. So, you know, it's time to make changes. And I do think we'll make those changes. I think there'll be a lot of people that will fall off. But you know, I have a lot of hope and faith, and we, you know, in agricultural goods, period. You know, I feel like it's a permanent part of our, you know, our time here. So,
what's your opinion on it? Because I think that when people in Europe are working in cannabis or with cannabis, they have to be super passionate about because of the current regulations, and maybe that's what you mentioned that brings people together even more than in the States, because it's so normal to work in cannabis, to work with cannabis, that people, like you said, go in there because there's money to get from. In Europe, it's still more like passion driven. And Martin, you know the industry very well. What is your take? What do you saw? Where is it going? Where has it been?
So we have seen it in the past, that we have two fractions of people, the money-driven one and the passion-driven one. I think it's in every market the same. But I guess Europe will develop pretty nice starting from Germany, because Germans, they're huge. 80 million people were now allowed to grow weed, and they will do it. They will do it at home, they will do it in clubs, and they do it medical. And so that will be a pretty nice combination and somehow a knowledge pool. For sure, we should look to California to learn from them and to learn the mistake and don't do the same mistakes again. But I also think, that in a few years, the Californians can learn from us as well. I think that will happen in both directions. And at the moment, the culture in Germany is pretty nice, So wherever you be in Germany, they have small events, just passionate growers sitting together and talking about their hobbies. And that's cool in my opinion.
That's really cool. I'm really looking forward to Berlin this year. Sure, it's going to be fun event. A lot of people coming together now very differently with a different energy. And thank all of you for sharing your thoughts on it. I hope you also liked it. Make sure to follow our socials, also Hydroponic Research and Veg Bloom. And see you next time. Bye.
Thanks.